Hi guys, welcome back to the Law of One Raw Material Part 4. And I'm going to talk quite a bit before we get into these next sessions because I want to help you guys laying out a foundation of really what Raw is going to be talking about for the rest of this book and moving on into the third book. And going into it, I find it better to have a good, understanding of the concept about what they're trying to get at. And that is basically the journey of the soul. So in this logos, we have free will and we are moving through the densities, having free will, and we are also under the veil of forgetfulness. So this is a very complex way to move through the densities. And the way that we do that is to continually be incarnated with lives like here on earth, the way we are right now, and still go through the journey of the soul. And if you guys get a copy of the Kabbalah and the Tree of Life, this illustrates that as well. And the things that Ra was talking about is how do we go through this journey under the veil of forgetfulness once we're here is the fact that we kind of choose what lives we are going to incarnate here in 3D to know oneself, because it's all about expansion. It's all about source finding out who they are, not just us, but we are part of source and the expansion of source or infinite intelligence, which is basically the same thing. Whenever Ra uses the term infinite intelligence, source, God, you can almost put any word you'd like in that space. But we all come from the same pinpoint of source. And as we go through our expansions, we go through the journey of the soul. So think of it as, and this is something that I had a vision when I was very young. I would say I was probably 11 or 12. And I had a vision of myself in spirit form, and it's as if I was looking down on earth, even though I couldn't see the earth. I just knew the cosmos was there. And I was excited because I'm going to be born soon. And I had chosen my parents already. I had chosen the life that I had wanted. It was a vision. And I'm like, oh, we choose where and how we want to incarnate because we have a preconception of the lessons that we want to learn in that lifetime. Now, because we're under the veil of forgetfulness, we have free will, but we also have the ability to manifest once we're here, but we have forgotten that part of it. So it's all about feeling and journeying through the polarization of every experience. So sometimes you wonder, well, why, if someone chooses their life, why would they choose to be born with, a deformation? Or why would you choose to be born in a body that's going to have childhood brain cancer and die at the age of 7? Why would, and you wonder why anyone would choose for some of these really bad situations. And there are two parts to this because we have soulmates, we're connected, and sometimes we kind of cluster souls together in groups and we reincarnate with each other over and over again, and we meet up in our lives over and over again. So the first part of this aspect is we would choose to reincarnate in a hard life here in order for expansion. You can't incarnate here in just like a rich kid life of privilege over and over again because you're not expanding, and eventually you're stagnant, and it's almost as if you go into a statue and your soul won't expand and you will not be able to create and manifest if you're constantly in that mode. And the thing is, when you kind of leave this life, before you go into the next one, you're going to choose a life that is different, that you can expand to more, because you will not be able to move through the densities until you almost have experienced absolutely everything 3D has to experience. And that includes having a very, sometimes horrible lives of diseases and loss and horror, really. Now, Because we cluster into soulmates and have help always from our higher self, from our soulmates, our spirit guides, a lot of times we have something called a soul contract. So say you want to experience being a mother, and feeling that level of love, but then losing the child and feeling the polarization of losing that love. Now, this is going to expand your soul in a major way. You will learn so much from that one lifetime. And if you can get through it and still polarize to the service of others, you go through a major soul expansion and part of your journey. Now, in order to play out something like that, a lot of times you have soul contracts with someone who will agree to be that child that dies during that lifetime. And you might have a soul contract together, goes, okay, and then next time I'll be the mother and you be the child, and then both of our souls will expand. And you just have to think about when you're doing the journey of the soul through the Kabbalah, think about those soulmates lifetime after lifetime. And because once you leave the 3D and 4D, you only then will you remember all the journeys that you've had, and you'll be able to share them and get such an understanding. And this is how infinite intelligence is wanting to learn about itself. This is how Source expands, how it knows who it is, and it's always expanding. So it's as if, and we'll get into this later on in the lessons when we actually go through the tarot, which I have a very intimate relationship with. And you really have to understand, like in the beginning, when there was just nothing, you didn't know anything. You like a child being born, they open their eyes, but as soon as a child is born, it has yet to feel anything yet. It's an empty vessel. So it'll learn what light is for the first time, only because it knew what dark was. It knows silence and sound, colors, everything is for the first time. So think about that as an expansion. But the same goes for the universe, for God, for Source, for infinite intelligence. It's about expansion. So in these next sessions, Ra starts to touch on the basis of sometimes having lifetimes of sacrifice in order for expansion or in order for a soul contract. Like say you have a soulmate and they want to experience something, and the thing is you want to help them because you're going to feel the polarity of it. And that's the whole point, is expansion. Otherwise you're a statue and then you turn into nothing and you collapse. So your only choice is to expand, and this is how it's kind of done. And they do talk a little bit more, and I really encourage everyone to always have a chart of the chakra system beside you, because Ra refers to it so much. And he even refers to it as how the colors in the chakra system change from 4th, 5th, and 6th density in negative and in positive polarization, like service to others and service to self. And when you look at the chakra system, when he's explaining it, it does make sense when the higher source colors to the indigo. So you have your root chakra, which is the very basic chakra, and then you have orange and yellow. So you would think, of course, these are primal instinct chakra systems, like of the animals, but service to self is where those chakras first began, almost, and so you can kind of see a 5th density entity having the green ray, but also having almost a lot of notes of the lower chakra system. And positively orientated entities will have the higher levels of the chakra system. And then as we move forward all the way to 6, it's just like when you take all colors of the rainbow and condense them, it turns white. And that is the journey of the soul through the densities. And Ra likes to refer to it in color, because energy is, which is what we all are, can be translated more into color. It's hard to find human words to explain this concept. So Ra refers to the colors, and it really is one of the better ways that we can kind of have an understanding and a visualization of what he's talking about. So let's get into it. Here are the next couple sessions of Book 2, Part 4, with The Law of One.
The Law of One, Book 2, Session 33. March 1st, 1981. Ra, I am Ra. I greet you in the love and in the light of the one infinite creator. I communicate now. Questioner, in our last session you said that each of us in these sessions should look well to the vital energies necessary for non-depletion of the instrument and the contact level. Did that mean that we should look at the instrument's vital energies or be careful of our own vital energies? Ra, I am Ra. Each entity is responsible for itself. The mechanics of this process taking place involve firstly, the use of the physical bodily complex of third density with its accompanying physical material in order to voice these words. Thus this instrument needs to watch its vital energies carefully, for we do not wish to deplete this instrument. Secondly, the function of the supporting group may be seen to be firstly, that of protection for this contact, secondly, that of energizing the instrument and intensifying its vital energies. This supporting group has always, due to an underlying harmony, been of a very stable nature as regards protection in love and light, thus ensuring the continuation of this narrow band contact. However, the vital energies of either of the supporting members being depleted, the instrument must then use a larger portion of its vital energies, thus depleting itself more than would be profitable on a long-term basis. Please understand that we ask your apology for this infringement upon your free will. However, it is our distortion understanding that you would prefer this information rather than, being left totally to your own dedication distortion, deplete the instrument or deplete the group to the point where the contact cannot be sustained. Questioner, can you give us advice on how to maintain the best possible condition for maintaining contact? Ra, I am Ra. We have given information concerning the proper nurturing of this channel. We, therefore, repeat ourselves only in two ways in general. Firstly, we suggest that rather than being, shall we say, brave and ignoring a physical complex weakness distortion, it is good to share this distortion with the group and thus perhaps, shall we say, remove one opportunity for contact which is very wearying for the instrument, in order that another opportunity might come about in which the instrument is properly supported. Secondly, the work begun in harmony may continue in harmony, thanksgiving and praise of opportunities and of the Creator. These are your protections. These are our suggestions. We cannot be specific, for your free will is of the essence in this contact. As we said, we only speak to this subject because of our grasp of your orientation towards long-term maintenance of this contact. This is acceptable to us. Questioner, thank you very much. We have a device for so-called color therapy. And since we were on the concept of the different colors in the last session, I was wondering if this would in some way apply to the principle of color therapy and the shining of particular colors on the physical body. Does this create a beneficial effect, and can you tell me something about it? Ra, I am Ra. This therapy, as you call it, is a somewhat clumsy and variably useful tool for instigating in an entity's mind-body-spirit complex an intensification of energies or vibrations which may be of aid to the entity. The variableness of this device is due firstly to the lack of true colors used, secondly, to the extreme variation in sensitivity to vibration among your peoples. Questioner, I would think that you could achieve a true color by passing light through a crystal of the particular color. Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. This would be one way of approaching accuracy in color. It is a matter of what you would call quality control that the celluloid used is of a varying color. This is not of a great or even visible variation, however, it does make some difference given specific applications. Questioner, possibly you could use a prism breaking white light into its spectrum and screening off all parts of the spectrum except that which you wish to use by passing it through a slit. Would this be true? Ra, I am Ra. This is correct. Questioner, I was wondering if there is a programming of experiences that causes an individual to get certain catalysts in his daily life. For instance, as we go through our daily life there are many things which we can experience. We can look at these experiences as occurring by pure chance or by a conscious design of our own, such as making appointments or going places. I was wondering if there was a behind-the-scenes, as you might call it, programming of catalysts to create the necessary experiences for more rapid growth in the case of some entities. Does this happen? Ra, I am Ra. We believe we grasped the heart of your query. Please request further information if we are not correct. The incarnating entity which has become conscious of the incarnative process and thus programs its own experience may choose the amount of catalyst or, to phrase this differently, the number of lessons which it will undertake to experience and to learn from in one incarnation. This does not mean that all is predestined, but rather that there are invisible guidelines shaping events which will function according to this programming. Thus if one opportunity is missed, another will appear until the, shall we say, student of the life experience grasps that a lesson is being offered and undertakes to learn it. Questioner: then these lessons would be reprogrammed, you might say, as the life experience continues. Let's say that an entity develops the bias that he actually didn't choose to develop prior to incarnation. It is then possible to program experiences so that he will have an opportunity to alleviate this bias through balancing. Is this correct? Ra: I am Ra. This is precisely correct. Questioner: thank you. From this I would extrapolate to the conjecture that the orientation in mind of the entity is the only thing that is of any consequence at all. The physical catalyst that he experiences, regardless of what is happening about him, will be a function strictly of his orientation in mind. I will use as an example deleted, this being a statement of the orientation in mind governing the catalyst. Is this correct? Ra: I am Ra. We prefer not to use any well-known examples, sayings, or adages in our communications to you due to the tremendous amount of distortion which any well-known saying has undergone. Therefore, we may answer the first part of your query asking that you delete the example. It is completely true to the best of our knowledge that the orientation or polarization of the mind-body-spirit complex is the cause of the perceptions generated by each entity. Thus a scene may be observed in your grocery store. The entity ahead of self may be without sufficient funds. One entity may then take this opportunity to steal. Another may take this opportunity to feel itself a failure. Another may unconcernedly remove the least necessary items, pay for what it can, and go about its business. The one behind the self, observing, may feel compassion, may feel an insult because of standing next to a poverty-stricken person, may feel generosity, may feel indifference. Do you now see the analogies in a more appropriate manner? Questioner: I think that I do. Then from this I will extrapolate the concept which is somewhat more difficult because as you have explained before, even fourth density positive has the concept of defensive action, but above the level of fourth density the concept of defensive action is not in use. The concept of defensive action and offensive action are very much in use in our present density. I am assuming that if an entity is polarized strongly enough in his thought in a positive sense that defensive action is not going to be necessary for him because the opportunity to apply defensive action will never originate for him. Is this correct? Ra: I am Ra. This is unknowable. In each case, as we have said, an entity able to program experiences may choose the number and the intensity of lessons to be learned. It is possible that an extremely positively oriented entity might program for itself situations testing the ability of self to refrain from defensive action even to the point of the physical death of self or other self. This is an intensive lesson and it is not known, shall we say, what entities have programmed. We may, if we desire, read this programming. However, this is an infringement and we choose not to do so. Questioner: I will ask you if you are familiar with a motion picture called the ninth configuration. Are you familiar with this? Ra: I am Ra. We scan your mind and see this configuration called the ninth configuration. Questioner: this motion picture brought out the point about which we have been talking. The colonel had to make a decision. I was wondering about his polarization. He could have knuckled under, you might say, to the negative forces, but he chose to defend his friend instead. Is it possible for you to estimate which is more positively polarizing, to defend the positively oriented entity, or to allow suppression by the negatively oriented entities? Ra: I am Ra. This question takes in the scope of fourth density as well as your own and its answer may best be seen by the action of the entity called Jehoshua, which you call Jesus. This entity was to be defended by its friends. The entity reminded its friends to put away the sword. This entity then delivered itself to be put to the physical death. The impulse to protect the loved other self is one which persists through the fourth density, a density abounding in compassion. More than this we cannot and need not say. Questioner: thank you. As we near the end of this master cycle there may be an increasing amount of catalyst for entities. I am wondering if, As the planetary vibrations mismatch somewhat with the fourth density vibrations and catalyst is increased, if this will create more polarization, thereby getting a slightly greater harvest? Ra, I am Ra. The question must be answered in two parts. Firstly, the planetary catastrophes, as you may call them, are a symptom of the difficult harvest rather than a consciously programmed catalyst for harvest. Thus we do not concern ourselves with it, for it is random in respect to conscious catalysts such as we may make available. The second portion is this: the results of the random catalyst of what you call the earth changes are also random. Thus we may see probability-possibility vortices going towards positive and negative. However, it will be as it will be. The true opportunities for conscious catalyst are not a function of the earth changes but of the result of the seniority system of incarnations which at the time of the harvest has placed in incarnation those whose chances of using life experiences to become harvestable are the best. Questioner: is this seniority system also used in the service to self side for becoming harvestable on that side? Ra, I am Ra. This is correct. You may ask one more full question at this time. Questioner: what I would like for you to do is list all the major mechanisms designed to provide catalytic experience that do not include interaction with other self. That is the first part. Ra, I am Ra. We grasp from this question that you realize that the primary mechanism for catalytic experience in third density is other self. The list of other catalytic influences: firstly, the Creator's universe; secondly, the self. Questioner: can you list any subheadings under self or ways the self is acted upon catalytically which would produce experience? Ra, I am Ra. Firstly, the self unmanifested. Secondly, the self in relation to the societal self created by self and other self. Thirdly, the interaction between self and the gadgets, toys, and amusements of the self, other self-invention. Fourthly, the self-relationship with those attributes which you may call war and rumors of war. Questioner: I was thinking possibly of the catalyst of physical pain. Does this go under this heading? Ra, I am Ra. This is correct, it going under the heading of the unmanifested self, that is, the self which does not need other self in order to manifest or act. Questioner: do we have enough time left to ask the second part of this question, which is to list all major mechanisms designed to provide the catalyst that include action with other self? Ra, I am Ra. You have much time for this, for we may express this list in one of two ways. We could speak infinitely, or we could simply state that any interaction betwixt self and other self has whatever potential for catalyst that there exists in the potential difference between self and other self. This moderated and undergirded by the constant fact of the Creator as self and as other self. You may ask to this question further if you wish specific information. Questioner: I believe that this is sufficient for the time being. Ra, I am Ra. Do you have a brief query or two before we close this working? Questioner: yes, here is one question. Is there any difference in violet ray activity or brightness between entities who are at entrance level both positive and negative to fourth density? Ra, I am Ra. This is correct. The violet ray of the positive fourth density will be tinged with the green, blue, indigo triad of energies. This tinge may be seen as a portion of the rainbow or prism, as you know it, the rays being quite distinct. The violet ray of fourth density negative has in its aura, shall we say, the tinge of red, orange, yellow, these rays being muddied rather than distinct. Questioner: what would the rays of fifth and sixth density look like? Ra, I am Ra. We may speak only approximately. However, we hope you understand, shall we say, that there is a distinctive difference in the color structure of each density. Fifth density is perhaps best described as extremely white in vibration. The sixth density of the whiteness which contains a golden quality as you would perceive it, these colors having to do with the blending into wisdom of the compassion learned in fourth density. Then in sixth the blending of wisdom back into an unified understanding of compassion viewed with wisdom. This golden color is not of your spectrum but is what you would call alive. You may ask one more question briefly. Questioner: then I will ask if there is anything that we can do to make the instrument more comfortable or to improve the contact? May we say we enjoyed your vision of our social memory complex drinking one of your liquids while speaking through this instrument. I am Ra. I leave you in the love and in the light of the one infinite Creator. Go forth, then, rejoicing in the power and the peace of the one infinite Creator. Adonai. The Law of One, Book 2, Session 34. March 4, 1981. Ra, I am Ra. I greet you in the love and in the light of the one infinite Creator. We communicate now. Questioner: You stated at an earlier time that penetration of the 8th level or intelligent infinity allows a mind-body-spirit complex to be harvested if it wishes at any time-space during the cycle. When this penetration of the 8th level occurs, what does the entity who penetrates it experience? Ra, I am Ra. The experience of each entity is unique in its perception of intelligent infinity. Perceptions range from a limitless joy to a strong dedication to service to others while in the incarnated state. The entity which reaches intelligent infinity most often will perceive this experience as one of unspeakable profundity. However, it is not usual for the entity to immediately desire the cessation of the incarnation. Rather, the desire to communicate or use this experience to aid others is extremely strong. Questioner: Thank you. Would you define karma? Ra, I am Ra. Our understanding of karma is that which may be called inertia. Those actions which are put into motion will continue using the ways of balancing until such time as the controlling or higher principle which you may liken unto your breaking or stopping is invoked. This stoppage of the inertia of action may be called forgiveness. These two concepts are inseparable. Questioner: If an entity develops what is called karma in an incarnation, is there then programming that sometimes occurs so that he will experience catalysts that will enable him to get to a point of forgiveness, thereby alleviating the karma? Ra, I am Ra. This is, in general, correct. However, both self and any involved other self may, at any time through the process of understanding, acceptance, and forgiveness, ameliorate these patterns. This is true at any point in an incarnative pattern. Thus, one who is set in motion and action may forgive itself and never again make that error. This also breaks or stops what you call karma. Questioner: Thank you. Can you give me examples of catalytic action from the last session, beginning with the self-unmanifested producing learning catalyst? Ra, I am Ra. This working is well. You are attempting to be conscientious. We thank you. May we say we enjoyed your vision of our social memory complex drinking one of your liquids while speaking through this instrument. I am Ra. I leave you in the love and in the light of the one infinite Creator. Go forth, then, rejoicing in the power and the peace of the one infinite Creator. Adonai. Ra, I am Ra. We observed your interest in the catalyst of pain. This experience is most common among your entities. The pain may be of the physical complex. More often it is of the mental and emotional complex. In some few cases the pain is spiritual in complex nature. This creates a potential for learning. The lessons to be learned vary. Almost always these lessons include patience, tolerance, and the ability for the light touch. Very often the catalyst for emotional pain, whether it be the death of the physical complex of one other self which is loved or other seeming loss, will simply result in the opposite, in a bitterness and impatience, a souring. This is catalyst which has gone awry. In these cases then there will be additional catalyst provided to offer the unmanifested self further opportunities for discovering the self as all-sufficient Creator containing all that there is and full of joy. Questioner: Do what we call contagious diseases play any part in this process with respect to the unmanifested self? Ra, I am Ra. These so-called contagious diseases are those entities of second density which offer an opportunity for this type of catalyst. If this catalyst is unneeded, then these second density creatures, as you would call them, do not have an effect. In each of these generalizations you may please note that there are anomalies so that we cannot speak to every circumstance but only to the general run or way of things as you experience them. Questioner: What part do what we call birth defects play in this process? Ra, I am Ra. This is a portion of the programming of the mind-body-spirit complex totality manifested in the mind-body-spirit of third density. These defects are planned as limitations which are part of the experience intended by the entity's totality complex. This includes genetic predispositions, as you may call them. Questioner: Thank you. Can you give me the same type of information about the self in relation to the societal self? Ra, I am Ra. The unmanifested self may find its lessons those which develop any of the energy influx centers of the mind-body-spirit complex. The societal and self-interactions most often concentrate upon the second and third energy centers. Thus those most active in attempting to remake or alter the society are those working from feelings of being correct personally or of having answers which will put power in a more correct configuration. This may be seen to be of a full travel from negative to positive in orientation. Either will activate these energy ray centers. There are some few whose desires to aid society are of a green ray nature or above. These entities, however, are few due to the understanding, may we say, Of fourth ray, that universal love freely given is more to be desired than principalities or even the rearrangement of peoples or political structures. Questioner: if an entity were to be strongly biased toward positive societal effects, what would this do to his yellow ray in the aura as opposed to an entity who wanted to create an empire of society and govern it with an iron fist? Ra, I am Ra. Let us take two such positively oriented active souls no longer in your physical time-space. The one known as Albert went into a strange and, to it, a barbaric society in order that it might heal. This entity was able to mobilize great amounts of energy and what you call money. This entity spent much green ray energy both as a healer and as a lover of your instrument known as the organ. This entity's yellow ray was bright and crystallized by the efforts needed to procure the funds to promulgate its efforts. However, the green and blue rays were of a toweringly brilliant nature as well. The higher levels, as you may call them, being activated, the lower, as you may call them, energy points remaining in a balance, being quite bright. The other example is the entity, Martin. This entity dealt in a great degree with rather negative orange ray and yellow ray vibratory patterns. However, this entity was able to keep open the green ray energy, and due to the severity of its testing, if anything, this entity may be seen to have polarized more towards the positive due to its fidelity to service to others in the face of great catalyst. Questioner: could you give me the last names of Albert and Martin? Ra, I am Ra. These entities are known to you as Albert Schweitzer and Martin Luther King. Questioner: I thought that was correct, but I wasn't sure. Can you give me the same type of information that we have been getting here with respect to the unmanifested interacting between self and gadgets and toys and inventions? Ra, I am Ra. In this particular instance, we again concentrate for the most part in the orange and in the yellow energy centers. In a negative sense, many of the gadgets among your peoples, that is what you call your communication devices and other distractions such as the less competitive games, may be seen to have the distortion of keeping the mind-body-spirit complex unactivated so that yellow and orange ray activity is much weakened, thus carefully decreasing the possibility of eventual green ray activation. Others of your gadgets may be seen to be tools whereby the entity explores the capabilities of its physical or mental complexes and in some few cases, the spiritual complex, thus activating the orange ray in what you call your team sports and in other gadgets such as your modes of transport. These may be seen to be ways of investigating the feelings of power, more especially, power over others or a group power over another group of other selves. Questioner: what is the general overall effect of television on our society with respect to this catalyst? Ra, I am Ra. Without ignoring the green ray attempts of many to communicate via this medium such information of truth and beauty as may be helpful, we must suggest that the sum effect of this gadget is that of distraction and sleep. Questioner: can you give me the same type of information that we are working on now with respect to war and rumors of war? Ra, I am Ra. You may see this in relationship to your gadgets. This war and self relationship is a fundamental perception of the maturing entity. There is a great chance to accelerate in whatever direction is desired. One may polarize negatively by assuming bellicose attitudes for whatever reason. One may find oneself in the situation of war and polarize somewhat towards the positive activating orange, yellow, and then green rays by heroic, if you may call them this, actions taken to preserve the mind-body-spirit complexes of other selves. Finally, one may polarize very strongly third ray by expressing the principle of universal love at the total expense of any distortion towards involvement in bellicose actions. In this way the entity may become a conscious being in a very brief span of your time-space. This may be seen to be what you would call a traumatic progression. It is to be noted that among your entities a large percentage of all progression has as catalyst, trauma. Questioner: you just used the term third ray in that statement. Was that the term you meant to use? Ra, I am Ra. We intended the green ray. Our difficulty lies in our perception of red ray and violet ray as fixed, thus the inner rays are those which are varying and are to be observed as those indications of seniority in the attempts to form and harvest. Questioner: would the red ray, an intense red ray, then be used as an index for seniority and incarnation as well as an intense violet ray? Ra, I am Ra. This is partially correct. In the graduation or harvesting to fourth density positive, the red ray is seen only as that, which being activated, is the basis for all that occurs in vibratory levels, the sum of this being violet ray energy. This violet ray is the only consideration for fourth density positive. In assessing the harvestable fourth density negative, The intensity of the red as well as the orange and the yellow rays is looked upon quite carefully, as a great deal of stamina and energy of this type is necessary for the negative progression. It being extremely difficult to open the gateway to intelligent infinity from the solar plexus center. This is necessary for harvest in fourth density negative. Questioner: is it possible for you to use as an example our General Patton and tell me the effect that war had on him in his development? Ra: I am Ra. This will be the last full question of this working. The one of whom you speak, known as George, was one in whom the programming of previous incarnations had created a pattern or inertia which was irresistible in its incarnation in your time-space. This entity was of a strong yellow ray activation with frequent green ray openings and occasional blue ray openings. However, it did not find itself able to break the mold of previous traumatic experiences of a bellicose nature. This entity polarized somewhat towards the positive in its incarnation due to its singleness of belief in truth and beauty. This entity was quite sensitive. It felt a great honor duty to the preservation of that which was felt by the entity to be true, beautiful, and in need of defense. This entity perceived itself a gallant figure. It polarized somewhat towards the negative in its lack of understanding the green ray it carried with it, rejecting the forgiveness principle which is implicit in universal love. The sum total of this incarnation vibrationally was a slight increase in positive polarity but a decrease in harvestability due to the rejection of the law or way of responsibility, that is, seeing universal love, yet still it fought on. Questioner: do we have enough time for me to ask if the death, almost immediately after the cessation of war, of this entity could have been so that it could have immediately been reincarnated so that it could make harvest? Ra: I am Ra. This is precisely correct. Questioner: thank you. Then I will just ask if there is anything that we can do to make the instrument more comfortable or to improve the contact? Ra: I am Ra. All is well. We leave you, my friends, in the love and the light of the one which is all in all. I leave you in an everlasting peace. Go forth, therefore, rejoicing in the power and the peace of the one infinite Creator. Adonai.
Okay, and that was the end of session 34. So Ra talked a lot about karma, he talked a lot about war and the journey of the soul and why all of us would incarnate here to play different roles within things that happen here on earth, whether it be in peacetime, in war. And the one thing that I just want to make a comment on is that disease is second density, and it's just something that I hadn't even thought of really before I heard it through the tapes, to categorize a disease in a density. And just like any other animal here, something that has life, that doesn't have consciousness but has life, and that goes like, so I would think a disease is in lower second density, even in compared to, say, a tree. They're both living. They can both expand and multiply and, divide and things like that. But wow, how polarizing negative is a disease. And it's just something that I'm thinking about now that we have, the coronavirus unleashed on the world as I put out these recordings. So I listened to that, and it's just it just made me think. And let me know in the comments what you guys thought of this last session, and please let me know if there's anything that you heard in the sessions that you would like me to elaborate on or try to give you better insight on, because sometimes you can get lost in the way some of the information unfolds. But I will leave it there, and let's get into part 5 of book 2, The Law of One.